Welcome to the management functions opportunity. So, I'll get right to it. So, people who create and destroy infrastructure frequently, or who want to use existing cloud resources, or people who like using the console every now and again, consultants and managed service providers, and people with BYOC style deployments have a problem, which is they can't import existing AWS resources into System Initiative. They can't have a template or reuse created things. They can't automate changing multiple components at once. And it's hard to manage the flow of change across similar things. Think like environments. And you can't automate changing anything in some ways, right? It's manual to do the configuration. So today, people solve this problem through cutting and pasting or import actions to populate resources. They do exist. They're just not evenly distributed and they're a little awkward. Or you might build like reference components that sort of only have some data, but not all of it. If you're using infrastructure as code, you might solve these sorts of problems with things like data sources or variables or running import commands from the CLI. Or if you're using stuff like Helm, you might use like versioned Helm charts to roll things out over time. So our solution is we're going to introduce this idea of a management function. So components can declare what kind of schema they manage. So they can have components that have manage edges to other components. So a component with a link to other things. They run in a change set. They get defined on components like any other function does. They can set their own component properties as a return value of the function, and they can do CRUD operations on any of the schema types that they manage. And they can also enqueue new actions. And they specify the relative position of things they create, and they set that 0, 0 position with a ghost. If you grab one of these management components and you run command, then what you'll get is a little ghost, and then you'll drop that, and then that'll expand to all the infrastructure that you described in the management function. And then users can run these things from a sub panel in the attributes panel, but you'll be able to also run them from a right-click menu on the diagram, and then you'll be able to watch the execution run in the change set. So these don't run on apply, they run in change sets because they're configuring components. The value users will get out of this is that they can then reuse other people's expertise. You can build your own abstractions. You can import existing infrastructure. You can reflect changes from the real world easily back into the model. They can automate more complex and repetitive tasks, and they can manage configuration across similar components in different environments. So the adoption strategy here is that we'll publish some reference documentation. There'll be some how-to guides. You'll be able to discover it from the UI. We'll do some demos in Discord. We'll write a blog post, and then we'll ship a standard AWS VPC asset that basically does what the tutorial does, only does it with a management function instead. And the metrics we'll track here are how often people run import, the number of management functions that get executed, how many template assets get created, the number of components that are under management. The business problem this solves for us is it allows multiple companies who need this to switch from infrastructure as code to do so. It opens up more incremental adoption and enables more expressive automation because you can share what are essentially like module feeling components. The budget for this is 4 weeks ending October 25th. And the business metrics here are the number of users who convert because of this and the number of customers who cite this as a reason to buy. So, who are we building this for? This is Jamie Madrox. Jamie runs X-Factor Investigations. He's the lead infrastructure consultant for them. They're an MSP for cloud infrastructure, and they build lots of similar things that they manage for customers at the same time. So they do a lot of creating and destroying copies of infrastructure all the time. They have parallel infrastructure for CI and CD pipelines, right? So every time they spin one of these things up, they also have to spin up all this other stuff that manages them. Jamie manages a lot of copies of similar things across lots of different customers' estates. He requires lots of people across customer accounts to interact. He tries to find similarities across those customers and then make it easy for team members to share what they learn from working with those customers in a repeatable way. And the customers they work with are never greenfield. They're always coming into a customer that has something and they need to work within those constraints. So by implication, Jamie cares a lot about how repeatable things are in System Initiative, right? He wants to be able to take those patterns, encode those things, and then use those as assets to then quickly create and manage components instead of having to do it manually every time. And he needs that easy way to create management functions from something he's already built. So you can imagine looking at a customer's estate and wanting to be able to then highlight the things you need and then be like, make me a management function that recreates this, a blueprint style. He needs to be able to schedule runs of management functions, right? So he might need to run these things on a schedule, for example, in CI or CD where there's an external trigger, right? So you could then run those management functions from like a web API. And he needs to bring things folks already have into the system so that he can then quickly use these management functions to create stuff and then integrate it with other things that already exist. So here's the story map for what we're actually about to build. it starts with a feature toggle that enables or disables management functions. And then if you have that toggle enabled, then you can go into the system. You'll be able to add management functions to existing components. You'll be able to author those management functions and configure schemas to accept them, right? So say I can manage these things or manage those things. Then you can actually write those functions using like a management builder in a similar kind of API to the one that we have now. Then you can add managed edges to things that you manage. So if you think about EPC manager that knows how to manage all those things, you can add those edges to a management component, which will then bring the data in when it runs the management function. Then you can execute a management function from the web. So you can come in, use the web API to actually execute the function. Then there's a bunch of work we need to do to actually run those management functions in a change set through SDF and Pinga. So basically it's an async job as opposed to a thing that the API layer handles for you. And then you'll be able to read documentation about how this feature works and discover those functions from us communicating with you. So the first slice of functionality we're going to deliver in this opportunity is import. So this is the ability to basically add in like an import ID to every single component. And then you can populate that ID and run the import management function. And what it'll do is reach out, grab the data about that thing and populate the component's attributes accordingly, and then automatically schedule a refresh function for you on apply. So that gets you the ability to just import arbitrary cloud resources. The next is templates and management. So this is being able to basically build a blueprint or a template that says, here's a bunch of standardized infrastructure. I want to see it in multiple places, and then I want to manage it over time. So you can think of this as like, how do I actually build and test and connect all of those things? And then how do we document how those templates work? But you'll be able to essentially build a component now, an asset that is a manager of other things. So an AWS standard VPC, drop it on the canvas, fill in some properties, then run a management function, which will then create all the things that make the standard VPC work, and then use the values of the properties of that component as inputs like a template, which will then allow you to manage it over time by writing other management functions that can then do arbitrary things, scale, deploy, those sorts of things. And then there's a few things that are below the line that we know we really want. The big one is the ability to convert existing stuff into a management function. So that's being able to imagine highlighting a bunch of stuff on the diagram and right-clicking on it and being like, write me a management function that positions all these things this way. We think that's probably a fast follow for this opportunity. Okay, thanks for listening. See you soon. If you have feedback about management functions, we'd love to hear you on Discord, or of course you can leave comments on the YouTube channel, or you can reach out to us via email or however you want. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks. Bye.